All right, welcome back to another video. And with no further ado, let's get into the recap for week 5, starting all the way back on Thursday night. Niners at the Rams. And I mean, you got to give credit to Kyle Shanahan. Arguably, maybe the coach of the year right now. Him, Shane Steichen, and a couple other guys in contention. But to have the Niners play this well with all the injuries on offense. Like the defense, Nick Bosa is out, but the rest of the guys, so the defense is going to be good. But to have this offense play this well with their top 3 receivers are out, with their quarterback being out, with the running back um still a little shaky, Christian McCaffrey, but to play this well against a very, very talented Rams team, you got to give credit to Kyle Shanahan. You got to give credit to Shanahan and this coaching staff. And if I'm the Niners, even if Brock Purdy's healthy, keep Mac Jones in. I mean, Mac Jones was the QB Kyle Shanahan wanted back in that 2021 draft, and he's looked better. I know Brock's been injured, but he's looked better than Brock in 3 games compared to Brock's 2 games. And I'm sorry, he's looked like the better quarterback, which is kind of an indictment because Stanford gave him that huge contract off of one good season in 2023 where he had all of his weapons healthy and they were making plays for him. I mean, shout out to Mac Jones. He might be just the next guy in line to have his career revived. I mean, most people forget, but as a rookie, he was looking like he was going to be the next face in New England. And then Bill Belichick just hurt his development with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge as his OC in 2022. His development went down, and then the team just got worse. Shout out to Kyle Shanahan. Shout out to Mac Jones. The Niners 4-1, first place in the NFC West. I mean, keep Mac Jones as the quarterback. They will do well for LA. It's a hard loss because it's against a division rival. The Rams were at home. San Fran's injured. You have all the momentum to get this win, and they just kind of blew it. I didn't really like the play call at the end, handing it off to Kyren Williams when they should have just kept the ball in Stafford's hands, make him, make a play like he always did. Not that Kyren Williams is a bad player, but it's just I feel like Sean McVay should have trusted Stafford in that moment to make the play, um, and maybe get a touchdown or at least get the first down. They're 3-2. Got the Ravens next week, which should be a win, and then a huge game in week 7 against the Jags in London. That'll be a huge one with how well Jacksonville's playing. But tough loss for LA, but should rebound next week. And, gotta give credit to the Niners with how banged up they are on offense to still be able to perform and play well. That's just a shout out to Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff. Moving on to the first London game of 3, Vikings at the Browns. Minnesota is an interesting team because, so far, and they have to bye, so we'll see what they look like in week 7 and who's the starting quarterback, whether it's McCarthy or Wentz. But so far, they'll have good games on the offense where it's like, hey, this thing is going well. Then they'll have bad games where it's like, what is going on? Throughout most of this game, Minnesota didn't look the greatest. The Cleveland outplayed them. It's just Minnesota's defense kept them in the game, hung them around, and they had a huge drive late in the game to win the game. Shout out Jordan Addison. I mean, apparently he was benched in the first quarter, but comes back in the fourth quarter. It makes a touchdown, game-winning play. So hats off to Addison. This Minnesota defense, even without their star linebackers and Van Ginkel and Cashman, still playing well. And a win is a win, but I'm still very concerned with what Minnesota has been so far because they're inconsistent from week to week, and maybe they were wrong to pick McCarthy over guys like Sam Darnold, who's played amazing, Daniel Jones, even Aaron Rodgers. All three guys who were interested in either coming back to the Vikings or coming to the Vikings in Rodgers' case. And Minnesota stuck with McCarthy thinking he was ready, and it might have been the wrong decision for Cleveland. I mean, they're better than what the record is. Like, that's just another game, just like the Bengals game, where it's like they played well but weren't able to get the win. Dylan Gabriel looked really good. I think Cleveland should keep him in there. Allow him to develop and see if he is the franchise QB. And this rookie class for Cleveland with Harold Fannin, Mason Graham, Judkins, obviously Dylan Gabriel, is looking like one of the best draft classes in recent memory. And if Cleveland can build with this class moving forward, I mean, maybe in a couple years, once they find that QB, whether it's Gabriel, Shador, or somebody off the roster, they could be a for real dark horse contender once they start to get stability at that QB position. Um, they're 1-4, obviously not as bad as their record is. Like they could be easily 3-2 um, with the Bengals game in this one, and could be fighting for a playoff spot. But hey, they're competitive, and that's all you really ask for. Cleveland being competitive in these games, not just being destroyed. And this is a better team than a lot of people think. And the people are saying fire Kevin Stefanski, you know, he's still a really good coach that's just been dealt a bad hand. And you see with games like this where it's like they're competitive against good teams. Going with Dylan Gabriel, not having the turnovers like Joe Flacco was in the first 4 weeks, really shows that he can build this team back up like we saw him do when he first got there in 2020. They just got to believe that he's the long term coach, which I think he is. And these are one of the games that shows it where it's like they were just a couple plays away from winning this game. Moving on to the Texans at the Ravens, and what an astronomical domination by Houston. And the Texans quietly 2-3, won back-to-back blowout wins, and I'm not going to say they're back because against Tennessee and Baltimore, not exactly the greatest teams right now, which is crazy to say, but it's good to see Houston getting some momentum and having, fun playing the game. Like CJ Stroud was out there looking like his rookie self, which you love to see. Everybody who was saying he was the problem, he's not the problem. The problem is Nick Caserio didn't go out and address the offensive line and basically just hope that a bunch of 1 year signings and rookies and other guys they drafted over the years. It's a hodgepodge group of guys. They're just hoping can block him or protect him, and it's like first few weeks it didn't really go well because you know there was growing pains because of all these guys not really knowing each other, new offensive coordinator. But it's great to see the Texans being able to play well, and 2-3. You know, still no sign of Joe Mixon. I don't know what the situation is with him, whether he's going to be out for the year or what, but the Texans are going to be a feisty team, and I could still see them making the playoffs. Um, it will be competitive with how good the AFC South has looked so far. Um, but just good win for the Ravens. I mean, this is not a Baltimore Ravens loss. This is a Jets loss. Like this is a loss. Like this is like the Ravens are looking like a team the past 2 weeks where it's like they've just given up on John Harbaugh. Like it really seems like the players have just given up on Harbaugh, given up on his philosophy. Because if you look at prior years when the Ravens were battered with injuries, they still were competitive in games, no matter who they were playing or where they were playing. They were still competitive because that's the Ravens' way. But I just think this is another reason why Harbaugh needs to be gone. Surprised Zach Orr hasn't been fired yet with how bad the defense is, but most likely going to be 1-5 entering the bye. And I'm sorry, you know, a lot of people I know are still going to believe in the Ravens, but I just can't with how bad this team has looked. Yes, they're injured, but the Niners have been injured. Last year, the Lions had basically their entire defense injured and still were winning games because that's what good organizations do. Okay? The Ravens just don't look like the same organization they've always been known to be. And I think that shows that they need to change things if they want to get back to the standard of the Ravens. Moving on to Dolphins at the Panthers. I mean, early on, this game looked like it was going to be a blowout. It looked like Miami was going to run away with this game. It looked like, Bryce Young, this is the end of his career, but then he kind of saved it with this game, maybe. I mean, he played tremendous football after that bad start. And I mean, this Panthers team, I don't know what to really say because, like, one game they look like the worst team in the league. Next game, they look like they are building something for the future. I don't know, what's going on. Yeah, I know the defense isn't the greatest, but you would expect at least the offense in year two under Dave Canales to look better. And it's just one week they look good, one week they look bad. But huge win for the Panthers, 2-3. Um, a better start than last year, which is all you can really expect. Bryce Young had another good, not great game. I still want to believe Bryce is the franchise guy in Carolina, but it's like if he continues to make these mistakes, I mean, Carolina, honestly, it's just one week good, one week bad. I'm so confused with that. With Miami, I mean, this is just another reason why Chris Greer and Mike McDonald need to be out at the end of the season. A blown lead. They're up 17-0 with all the momentum. It finally felt like the Dolphins were getting this team rolling. And then what happens? They abandoned what they were doing well and let the Panthers come back from this game. This defense went from looking like the unit, at least the defensive line, looking like the unit everybody expected them to, looking like they did the first couple of weeks. I mean, 1-4, not the greatest start for Miami, but these are losses where it's like Miami needs to make changes at the end of the season. Let Mike McDonald just finish out the year and then fire him and Chris Greer. But just another bad loss for the Dolphins when it's like they could have had momentum to, like outside of week one, the rest of these weeks have been winnable. It's just Miami has been losing them. Tua has been not the greatest, and Mike McDaniel has not been the greatest, but hopefully Miami can um, make the necessary changes and move on from the current regime and actually build this roster to finally get the first playoff win since 2000. Moving on to the Colts and the Raiders and Indianapolis. I mean, they might be a front runner with Buffalo losing. They might be a front runner to get that top seed with how well they've played. I mean, and if it wasn't for Adonai Mitchell fumbling the ball and then that penalty holding call on the Jonathan Taylor touchdown, they could be 5-0 and the only unbeaten team remaining. They destroyed a bad Raiders team. Daniel Jones looks great. Jonathan Taylor looks like he's the offensive player of the year. The defense has been amazing. 4-1. The Colts have looked amazing so far through 5 games. A lot of people I think thought it was a fluke. Um, thought the Raiders would stay in this game, but I thought this was going to be a blowout, start to finish. The Colts are the better team, and they've shown that. And you know, but this is a way, like this is a head coach who was on the hot seat, taking advantage of not an easy schedule, but taking advantage of an easier part of the year where it's like they can rack up wins and look like the dominant team. And this is no fluke. The Colts are for real. They're going to be contending, not just for the South, but for the top seed in the AFC with how well they've played. And you got to give credit to Shane Steichen, got to give credit to Daniel Jones and this Colts organization for playing well and looking like a for real deal. For the Raiders, I mean, it might just be a lost year. The Raiders looked horrible. I mean, Geno Smith has seemingly regressed from his Seattle years. Like, I don't know if it's his age. I don't know what it is, but like, he seemingly regressed. I know the offensive line isn't the greatest and Brock Bowers isn't there, but it's like Seattle, last year didn't have a very good offensive line, and yet Geno was still playing very well. So you can't really blame the O line when Geno's making all these bad interceptions. You know, I mean, it was early on in the game. It was 14-3 Colts, and you're thinking, okay, you know, and Vegas had the ball in, the red zone. And you're thinking, okay, if the Raiders score a touchdown here, it's a close game. Instead, Geno throws a pick, and I think that was the only time they ever got two in these red zones for the rest of the game. He throws a pick, and then Indy's able to go down and score a touchdown, and it turned into a blowout after that. You know, a lot of people I remember all throughout the offseason saying, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll are going to raise the floor of this team. If this is the floor raising they're talking about, I'm sorry, but this is not anywhere as this is nowhere better than they were last year. And at least that team was competitive in games. They weren't really getting blown out. This team might be worse, and they just might be picking first overall. And yeah, moving on to the Saints hosting the Giants. New Orleans getting their first win. Shout out Spencer Rattler getting his first win. He's looked pretty well. You know, not saying he's going to be a long term guy, but I mean, I was pretty excited for him to get the start, and he's looked pretty well. That defense still making plays like they always do, and getting their first win, 1-4. They're not going to go winless. So shout out Kellen Moore getting his first win as a coach on the Saints team. They're not as bad as a lot of people entering the year said they were going to be. And I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be later in the season. They're going to be a thorn in teams, like playoff teams, where it's like you play the Saints, it's going to be a competitive game no matter what. For the Giants, I mean, this was a winnable game. I mean, they were up 14-3 in the second quarter with all the momentum. 5 turnovers, including 3 by your rookie quarterback who didn't look as good as he did last week against the Chargers. And I do still believe Jackson Dart is the future of this team. He is a rookie. He is going to make mistakes like that. But, I mean, the Giants were up 14-3. Didn't do anything after that. Like, they were up double digits on the road against the Saints team. And they could have been 2-3 entering this week's Thursday game against the Eagles. Instead, they blew the opportunity. I mean, the Cam Scatterboo fumble that led to the Saints touchdown was just icing on the cake. The two back-breaking interceptions by Dart to Kool-Aid McKinstry. Um, but this is a game where it's like the Giants could have been 2-3 and at least, going to be decent. Instead, you blow this game, and with how hard their schedule is coming up, like playing the Eagles, Broncos, Niners, all in a row, it's kind of hard to see many wins in that case. So we'll see how this team plays throughout there. Cowboys at the Jets. I mean, if Dallas's defense can play like this against good offenses, Dallas is a real playoff team with how well this offense is looking. Javonte Williams might be the breakout player of the year. Had a great rookie year back in 2021, but then tore his ACL in his sophomore year in 2022. It hadn't really looked the same the past couple of years, but has looked phenomenal in Dallas. Dak Prescott, George Pickens, this offense still looks good despite no CeeDee Lamb. And if the defense can play as well against good teams, the way they played against the Jets, I mean, this team can be for real. A for real playoff team. Yeah, for the Jets. I mean, I'm not a fan of firing head coaches in the first year, but this has been abysmal. I mean, two of their three home games so far have been blowouts against the Bills and Cowboys. The one bright spot was that Steelers game. They almost came back against the Bucks in week 3, but it's like this team just does not look great. And for a Jets team where I didn't think they were going to be, contending for anything, but I thought they were going to be competitive. I thought, they were going to rely on the run game, play excellent defense, and, keep games close. But this defense looks worse than what they were last year. And, I'm not a fan of firing coaches in the rookie year just because, you have to let the guy develop. But it's like, how bad the Jets have looked through 5 games with, winnable games. Like you look at 3 of their 5 losses against the Steelers, Bucks, and Dolphins. All 3 games were winnable, but they just made backbreaking turnovers, penalties that hurt them and allowed the other team to win. So it's like they're 0-5. Apparently, they're the first team since like 30 something to not have a turnover in the first 5 games. And it's just how much longer they got the Broncos next week in London. How much longer does Aaron Glenn get with how bad this Jets team has looked? Moving on to the Broncos at the Eagles, and shout out Sean Payton. I mean, I was hearing all the chirps, a couple weeks ago when they lost that Chargers game that, Sean Payton isn't what he used to be. Sean Payton failed the Broncos. Well, how about this game? Vance Joseph, tremendous game, although it's not that hard to stop an Eagles team that's literally just passing the ball all the time. But shout out Sean Payton. I mean, making the aggressive moves and then paying off. Denver was down 14, and it looked like they couldn't do a thing. Bo Nix and his team played well. I know people are going to say, "Oh, what about the intentional grounding or the pass interference?" You can scream and shout about, "Oh, this penalty should have been called," but Denver, that defense played well. Nick Bonito, defensive player of the year, maybe. But shout out to Sean Payton for how well he had this Broncos team playing, especially after the early bad start. They looked tremendous in the second half and looked really good. And for the Eagles, I mean, this was bound to happen. I mean, Phillies, the way they were winning game was not sustainable. And it finally caught up to them. Kevin Patullo has not looked good as an offensive coordinator, taking over for Kellen Moore. And with how many weapons this offense has, they need to utilize all of them. Like, they can't just utilize the running game or the passing game. They need to be able to utilize both because this offense is not going to be playing well. If it wasn't for Philly's defense being how good it has been, this team might be winless with how bad the offense has looked at times. And I mean, I'm sorry, but the Eagles need to get these things cleaned up if they want to be back in the Super Bowl. If this offense is not performing to how well we know it is, good teams are going to exploit that. Philly is not going to be a Super Bowl contender when it comes down to it. Moving on to the 4 o'clock games, Tennessee at Arizona. Cam Ward, first win of his career, came in an interesting game. Another week with Brian Callahan for Tennessee because they won this game. But Cam Ward, tremendous game. People love to knock him because of how bad his stats look, but it's like the team around him is not good. And what exactly is he supposed to do? Like, with a bad roster and bad coaching staff, it's not like he's magically going to turn the team into, a Super Bowl team. So the stats don't look great, but he's playing pretty damn well. And, first win of his career, Tennessee gets a huge win in a game they probably shouldn't have won. All things considered, but you get the win. You're 1-4, and you can move on to next week, at least knowing that the team is not going to go winless. For Arizona, I mean, I don't know what to say. Kyler Murray gets injured. I get, the way they were calling plays, it's because Kyler was injured. But, I mean, another drop ball. I mean, how many times are we going to see it where a player runs into the end zone and they drop it before they? It's like all you have to do is just secure the ball until you get into the end zone. If you want to spike it or do whatever with the ball, afterwards, do that. But do not drop the ball before you get into the end zone. We saw it last week with Adonai Mitchell. We see it this week with Amari DeMarcado. That was one of the plays that changed this game. The pick, fumble, kicked around, touchdown for the Titans. This was a game where it's like Arizona, everything was going right. And this what frustrates me with this team is because they've had so many games where it's like they've been in control, they've had a chance to win, and they blow it. You look at the first 2 weeks against the Saints and Panthers. We're dominating those teams for the most part, but for some reason decided to not, take advantage and control the game where it's like it wouldn't be that close. Same with this game, and it finally got caught up with them when they lost this game. And Jonathan Gannon, I know he's built a great thing here in Arizona, but it kind of has to fall on the head coach because how many times is Arizona going to continue to blow these leads like they're nothing? Like they're just blowing them as if like, we don't need the wins. And it finally caught up to them. And I think Jonathan Gannon so hardly should be on the hot seat because yes, Kyler Murray needs to take accountability, but so does the head coach. I mean, if your team isn't disciplined and isn't controlling these games that they have double-digit leads in, who does it follow? The coach. Moving on to Bucks at Seahawks, a game of the year candidate, arguably. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. I mean, both teams look amazing outside of the defenses. Although the defenses did make plays, so um, but Baker and the Bucks 4-1. I mean, are they gonna win the number one seed in the NFC with how wide open it looks? It's possible. I mean, they look amazing. Um, yeah, Tampa Bay playing excellent football. Baker living up to my preseason MVP candidate for a reason. He has looked phenomenal. Emeka Ibuka could be the offensive rookie of the year with how well he's played. With the banged up injuries Tampa Bay has on the offensive line and in the wide receiver core. And I mean, they're 4-1. This Bucks team looks for real. They look like a serious Super Bowl threat. And with the Eagles losing and their offense not looking the greatest, Tampa Bay truly could be a the team to beat right now in the NFC. And it's hard to argue with how good this team has looked. For Seattle, I mean, it's got to tip the cap. I mean Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. I think it was like they were the first quarterbacks to both have over like 350 yards, and it was something crazy that they both had. So shout out to both guys from the 2018 class, looking like the QBs that everybody expected back then. Um, but Seattle, tough loss, but I mean, with how good the Bucks are, you kind of say, hey, we lost, but it was a good game. Sam Darnold looked great. This team still really good and in a really competitive NFC West. Um, I think Seattle for surely could be a playoff team with how wonky the NFC looks right now with not that many true contenders. I think Seattle's offense plays like this, and their defense, which we know is great. Um, I think Seattle could be a threat to not just win the NFC West, but win the NFC outright with how good this offense looks and with how good the defense we know it is. Moving on to Lions at the Bengals. Detroit, they have looked dominant since that week one loss. They have looked as good as they were last year, if not better. I think, they became the first team to average 30 plus points in the first 5 games in back to back seasons. I mean, they look on fire with how well this offense look. And I think just week one, there's always games where it's like teams that look the greatest, and it's just week one because they were bringing in 2 new coordinators and a lot of new coaches on that team. And Green Bay kind of caught them off guard, but Detroit still looks like the for real deal team to win the NFC North, a contender with Tampa Bay and Seattle and plenty of other teams. And I mean, they look great. And another huge win, 4-1 for the Bengals. Too late, too little, too late. I should say. Got destroyed through 3 quarters, and then finally started to play well in the fourth quarter when the game was basically over with. Um, you know, Jake Browning still, I mean, he looked better than he had the past couple of weeks, but Cincinnati's now 2-3. They've lost 3 straight, and it's just without Joe Burrow, this Bengals team is not very good. And even at home, they were getting embarrassed by the Lions. I mean, you'd think at home they at least be more competitive with their fans, but it did not look good. Zach Taylor was getting booed. Um, and maybe Cincinnati finally moves on from him and brings in an actual good head coach for Burrow and this Bengals team to finally help them get over the hump. But we'll just have to see. Washington at the Chargers. Jaden Daniels returns to the lineup, and Washington looked amazing. Early on, didn't look the greatest, but when you scored 27 unanswered in the next 3 quarters and shut out the team in those same 3 quarters, It's impressive. Washington looks just as good as they were last year. Um, Despite the injuries, Washington's still a contender in the NFC. Um, and they're just going to continue to get better. Hopefully, Terry's back next week, so this offense can get clicking. Debo's looked amazing. Everybody called him washed, but he just needed a new environment, a new team to help him play better. And this Washington team is as good as advertised and are still a contender in the NFC. For the Chargers, something a little shaky. I mean, Marion Hampton now is going to miss at least 4 weeks being put on the IR. And with all the injuries LA is having, it is not looking the greatest, especially with the Broncos playing excellent football now. Obviously, with the Chiefs, still being in there. The Chargers, everybody was clamoring over them, kind of like the Packers, when they were undefeated. But now, losses and injuries, team's looking a little shaky, and, we'll see how LA responds. But back to back losses to teams that, a lot of people would say LA's better than, but these injuries are just hurting them a lot, and it's making them really hard to win these games. But huge, huge win for Washington. Moving on to Sunday Night Football. Patriots at Bills, and Drake May might be the. I mean, him, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams, I think, are for sure from that 2020. Even Bo Nix. I think those four guys for sure are going to be long-term QBs with how well Drake May outdueled Josh Allen. Despite each team having turnovers, Drake May looked like the better quarterback. I mean, he was playing excellent football. Huge plays down the field to Stephon Diggs. I mean, Drake May was looking like he was a 10-year veteran out there, outdueling Josh Allen with how good he looked. And the Patriots, I mean, give credit to them. Early on, early season losses against the Raiders and Steelers, should have been winnable games, but they've been able to get on a winning streak. And with a huge win like this propels well New England into maybe a wild card, hopeful with how well they played against the Bills, knocking off the last undefeated team after the Eagles lost. And got to give your hat to Drake May, Mike Vrabel, and this Patriots team that looks for real every game now. For Bills, I mean, turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. I mean, what can you say? When you turn the ball over multiple times, giving the other team opportunities to score points, it's kind of hard to, win the game. Josh Allen did not look like the MVP everybody was hyping him up to be. He had a horrible game. He looked like turnover ball Josh Allen, pre Joe Barry, where he would just chuck the ball downfield, make these bad turnovers. He looked like he was trying to play Superman. Um, I know they have injuries, Ed Oliver and on defense, but still, I mean, this is a Bills team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and it is just one loss. But to see the Patriots be able to force these turnovers on a Bills team that hadn't really coughed the ball up the first 4 weeks, they were very, very good at not turning the ball over. To see them, play like this, not saying they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders, it's just it kind of gives you a blueprint on how to beat the Bills is to make them turn the ball over, and you're able to score points, off of those turnovers. And then finally, Monday Night Football, Chiefs, Jags. I mean, this was an instant classic. Early on, it looked like the Chiefs were going to run away with it. Jacksonville's offense, drove down the field, fumble the football, goes down and score up 14-0. You're thinking like, this is the Chiefs of the old. They're going to blow out the Jags. shout out to Jacksonville. Shout out to Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, and this Jags team. I mean, they fought hard. The Devin Lloyd pick six was incredible to watch. Um, and this is like one of those huge wins as a team where it's like, if you get this win, you kind of establish yourself as maybe an up and coming team if you get a huge win like this, like the Jags did. 4-1, tied with the Colts for first place in the AFC South. And Jacksonville could be a surprise, contender with a lot of the, top tier teams entering the year and even starting off the year not looking the greatest. The Jags, with how good this offense looked, um, post the first quarter, and with how well this defense was able to shut down the Chiefs' offense, um, and make plays to be able to keep Jacksonville in this game. I think it shows that the Jags are for real. That maybe this iteration of the team finally won't be like other iterations. We'll have good moments and then come back down to being bad. I think this team could be for real contenders for years to come. And that's what you want to see from Liam Cohen, from this Jacksonville team. And Trevor Lawrence played his butt off. I mean, early on in the season, it looked like he was still making those bad decisions that he had made all of his career. But tonight, he did have the interception, but played excellent. I mean, didn't get much help from the running game, although Travis Etienne did have some good runs. But Trevor Lawrence looked pretty great out there. And if he plays like this consistently, he can enter those top 10 conversations, and the Jags can be Super Bowl contenders for years to come. But that'll be it for this video. Hope you guys like it. Hope you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell to get notified for whenever I make a video. And I will catch you guys in the next video, which will be on Thursday for my picks. And yeah, see y'all and bye.